Welcome to Sonic Legacies, a series of talks on the realm of sound and its role in our past, present, and future. The idea of what music is and how it came into being is a very difficult one, if not an almost impossible one to tackle. Scholars, however, hypothesize that music in some form existed prior to human speech through simple melodic expressions, murmurations, hummings, and other such rudimentary organized vocalizations. The late scholar, museum curator, and conductor Jeremy Montague has suggested that the striking of flint stones and rhythmic movements have something to do with the origins of music. In prehistory, the first kind of musical instruments are thought to be rattles, stampers, drums, reeds, and trumpets. There is also evidence of bone pipes, whistles, or flutes from around 50,000 years ago. From conch shells, animal horns, bull roarers, phalange whistles, and rasps, Montague points to varied instruments that clearly appear musical in function during this period and indicates that stringed instruments could have originated during the Mesolithic period, the earliest of which he says was the musical bow. In Indian musical traditions, the veena finds a preeminent place alongside other stringed instruments. It is found in many religious and historical texts of antiquity. Today, we are discussing one such ancient stringed instrument, which was lost to history but has been wonderfully reimagined through the study of ancient literary descriptions. I am most pleased to introduce a talented musician and luthier who is responsible for an exciting historical, musical, and artistic project of reviving an ancient arched harp, the Yazh, which finds mention in Tamil Sangam literature and has not been known to have existed since the 7th century. With us today is Tharun Sekar. Tharun, welcome to the talk and many thanks for taking the time out to participate in this.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
I'll jump right in and ask you the first question. Could you talk about when and how you came across the literature on the Yazh and how you began thinking of recreating it?
So it all started when I was in my 10th grade. So I was into music. I was playing guitars. And I was fascinated about building this instrument called the lap steel guitar. I was fascinated by the sound of it. I wanted to build it because it was not available in any of the local stores, but even on the online markets in India. So that was the initial thing that I started. So I bought some wood stock. I studied about the instrument from the internet, and I started building it, and it was completed in a couple of months. So after hearing the sound of it, and the process of making it was kind of exciting to me. I continued doing it. So after completing one guitar, I used to build guitars, like different kinds of guitars, like banjos, ukuleles, acoustic guitars, electric guitars. Every time I used to come back to Madurai. So that's how I started it. So I did architecture. So when I was in my internship, I was doing it in Oroville. So I was learning mud architecture there. So in the meantime, I met this person called Erisa Neogy, who was a master luthier who was building instruments, building guitars for the past 35 years. So I went to him and showed him all of my work. And he was really kind enough to take me as his assistant, not literally assistant, but he taught me the details and nuances of building a guitar. So that's how I got the professional knowledge of making the instrument. Before that, it was mostly amateurish. Like I was making it on my own, like seeing the YouTube videos and all that. After this training for 6 months, I came to know about the sounding, the aesthetical elements and structural elements of an instrument. So that's how I started it. So after completing my college, I wanted to pursue this as a profession. So instead of, I had this thing in my mind. I was always doing Western instruments. I was always making Western instruments. I was always playing Western instruments. I was never into any of the Indian instruments. So this question hit me hard, and like, I really wanted to study more about Indian instruments. So initially, what I did was I went to the study of West Bengalish instruments like sarangi, dotara, sarinda, and all that. So that was exciting to me. So after a while, I was in Madurai, and my friend Shiva, he works as a research team head in Kiradi. So he did all the architectural documentation of Kiradi, and we were discussing about the instrument called yard. So it's probably every Tamil guys would have heard the instrument's name once in their life, but like the same, I was also hearing it a lot of time, but I didn't know what the instrument is and how it would have sounded. So initially, Shiva told me to build a yard. So that's how the process began. So yeah.
How did you start the process of accessing that documentation and reading it? I mean, I'm sure it was in language which is not very accessible. So what was the process of getting the information about the description of the instrument from these sources?
Initially, what I did was, like everyone else, I went to the internet and searched about the instrument. I was not able to find any of the documentations available, research documentaries available on the internet. There were no sound of yard being documented or recorded. So there were only some museum kind of pieces that was not playable, but it still had the shape of it. So that was all I could find. So after a while, I met some researchers, Tamil scholars like Muhammad. So Muhammadaya stays in Madurai. He's 75-year-old. He has done a lot of research about Tamil musical instruments and Tamil music and Tamil pad. So I met him and like he told me some good inputs. And another guy called PG Saravanan, who is a collector of all these research documentaries. So he had all the research database that I needed for the making of yarn. So he gave me some 40, 50 research booklets of about yarn. And then I found this book called Yarn Noor, which was written in 1947 by Swami Vibulananda Adigara. So it is a complete compilation of how yard would have been and like what are all the musical theories and mathematics behind the strings of it and all that. So it was not from a single source, but instead it was from collective sources like 60 to 100 different kinds of research papers that helped me to redesign the instrument. So and another problem is it was all text. It was there were no practical diagrams or factual informations of yard, so it was all text. So for finding the playing position of the yard, you have to go to a poem that says how the yard would have been played. So it is a compilation of study. So from here and there we get information and we compile it into a design.
So you find the description of the instrument in the poem itself, the poem that you mentioned. What kind of description is it? I mean, do you remember it offhand, or could you tell us what elements of the description is? Does it mention materials as well?
Yeah, sure. I'll be able to tell it. So, for example, in Sivaga Sindhamani, so there is a scene where Sivagan and Gandharvai goes in a yard competition, and like Sivagan brings different kinds of yard. So the first one he brings, and everyone rejects it. Like there is a master luthier who rejects it because the wood of the yard which was made of is had a lot of moisture in it. So that was a criteria. So another criteria they were telling about is the wood should not have been hit by a thunder or a storm. So that is the second criteria. So for selecting a yard, so there was a proper luthier who knows about the yard, knows about wood and how it sounded and all that. So this is one thing. For instance, like let's take Silapadigaram. In Silapadigaram, it explains about the five different kinds of yard, like Sengoti yard, Sagode yard, Magare yard, Peri yard, and Siri yard. So these yards were based on the number of strings. Sengoti yard had 7 strings, Sagode yard had 14 strings, Magare yard had 19 strings, and the Peri yard has 21 strings. So these are from the Silapadigaram, we were able to find the different classifications of yard based on the number of strings. So there is another set of classification based on the shape. So that is classified as Mayuri yard, which is peacock, and Mache yard, which is fish, and vidyal, which is bow. So there are these two different kinds of classifications of yard. So in Sivaga Sindhamani, they were sitting and playing it. So they were sitting on the ground and playing it. So we were able to find the playing position of the yard from there. So like these kind of researches help me to come up with a design in a sense.
So that's quite substantial, right? You have ideas and descriptions of the wood that it's made of, certain kind of wood. You have descriptions of its shape. You have descriptions of the number of strings. Were there also descriptions of its tonality or other aspects of the instrument?
Yeah, so that was the thing. Like, so in Tamil, mostly the writing were more more of an exaggeration. Like the sound would have been described as the sound of an honey. So we can't find how a honey would work. So these kind of things made the research bit difficult. And like the shape of the instrument was said to be the eighth month of a pregnant lady, which so these kind of exaggeration made it a little difficult. Like more of a factual information could have helped.
That's very interesting. So, how did you then, with this information in your hand, how did you start the process of recreating the instrument? I mean, what was the initial process? I mean, how did you make the decisions on what materials to use and how to actually physically craft it?
Okay.
Did you also use cross references with descriptions of venas and other stringed instruments or bowed instruments of that period?
So veena was an instrument. Like veena was evolved from yard, but the initial form of yard was much more simpler than veena. Veena is another technological improvement that came like after the evolution of yard. So I didn't take any references from veena. So yard as an instrument. So initially we decided to go with the simpler form. So the simplest of the string types is Singo-TR, which had only 7 strings. So it'll have 7 notes, open string, like each note will play each note, like each string will play each note. So it was like that. And we decided to go with the shape of the peacock. So that's how it started. So I started designing the instrument, and I was confused about the wood selection of the instrument and all those. So I went back to my teacher, Erisa, Neogy, and I was discussing with him about what wood can be used. So traditionally, the selection of wood was palamaram and semmaram. Palamaram is jackfruit tree. I don't know the literal translation for semmaram, but palamaram is jackfruit in which the veena is also made. Veena, tawul, and nadaswaram are made with palamaram. I had a confusion about the wood because palamaram is a kind of heavy wood. So I went to my teacher and asked him about what would suit for this instrument. And like there are tamburas being made with red cedar, there are veenas being made with red cedar, and they sound lovely. So red cedar is also a lighter wood, and like but it's hard to find. But it's an amazing wood. So we decided to go with red cedar with parts of Kali Marudhu, Pillai Marudhu, and a little bit of teak and a little bit of rosewood. So like these all were the wood selection that we did. So after making up the design, so the design was full of mathematical calculation, like of which frequency to be like what is the scale length of the string, or like which note is going to be played on the instrument and all. So that's how we designed the instrument. So it was a process after the study research.
And in terms of the very first instrument that you made, how long did it take, and what was the outcome of the first fabrication?
So the first instrument I started in 2019. Like it almost took a year with all the research and study involved. So I completed it in the October of 2020, I think, October or September of 2020. So it almost took a year. So So throughout the process, we didn't know how the instrument would sound. So it was mysterious to us. Like we were following the instructions, we were taking notes from the literature, ancient Tamil literature, but we didn't know how the instrument would sound in there. So it was a mysterious thing. So it was on June 4th that I first heard the sound of the instrument, and it was amazing. Like that feel was totally good for me.
As a guitar player and a musician in general, when you first heard the sound of this instrument that has literally not been in existence for centuries, and one doesn't know what it sounds like even from literary sources, how would you describe what you heard?
So the sound was having a little bit reverb to it, and like it had a big frequency spectrum. But it was not about the single note. Like a good amount of good strings were vibrating to with that. So the sound was mostly based on the space where we are playing. So instead of hearing it from the instrument alone, it was more associated to the space around us. So it sounded different in this room, and it sounded different in the terrace of the building, and it sounded different in another place. Like that's how it was. And since we use goat skin for the top, the sound had a bit of reverberation, and like not as like the other harp instrument, it has a wooden top, and like that does not keep the sustenance a bit longer, and this kept the sustenance a bit longer. And the shape of the resonator is bowl shaped, and like it was more like a bell ringing, uh, uh, ringing bell of sound. Like it was with this shape, like yeah.
Okay, very good. Do you want to show us the instrument and talk about it and play it a little bit as we continue now?
Yeah, sure. So this one is completed just yesterday. So
Right.
this is Sangam-era, and it has 14 strings.
Oh, beautiful. Yeah. And could you talk about the different components of the instrument? I mean, what are the elements of the instrument in physical terms?
This portion is the neck, and it's called Tande in Tamil. So this is the portion where the strings are being held. So we have the tuning pegs here. So the tuning pegs hold the strings, and we can tune it to whatever note we want. And this will be the head, and this portion is completely hollow inside the neck. And this is the resonator, which is also hollow. And we have two sound holes, and this will also act as the access hole for changing strings. And this is again a thing that you use to take the load from this neck. So the load from the neck is about 170 kilos. So the pulling load. So it takes a bit of the stress from the neck, and this is also reinforced with brass, so that it will be sustainable and like come for many years. And this is
sorry, go on.
So this is the goat skin that we are using, and these are the brass nuts for that reverberating tone.
Do you work with a set of fabricators for all the materials in the instruments, people that you've worked with before, or was that a process of finding fabricators initially?
So most of the part we make it by ourselves. So we have a workshop on the terrace. So we most of the things like we make it by ourselves for making sure the sound of the instrument is good. Other than that, we have worked with many kind of carpenters with carving work. Like we are a team. So right now, my junior Dinesh and an intern Varshi and another junior Poover, we all are working together.
Okay, great. So could you just if you could play the instrument and let us know how it is played as well, that would be interesting to know.
Yeah. So right now the instrument is tuned in C major. So I'll just play the instrument. also does this. Yeah. So when we press the goat skin top, and like it does this wow sound.
What kind of music, in your description, what would be the kind of music that would be played? Because we do not understand any of its legacy or its traditions except for the sparse information in historical texts. How do you
Mhm.
describe the music that is played with this instrument?
So that's again a question here. So it's completely new to the world in a sense, but it's from the past. But we don't have any of the documentation of what could have been played with this and all that. So it's completely new to the world, and like I'm trying to collaborate with different artists to see the potential of the instrument. Like I'm trying to collaborate with rappers. I'm trying to collaborate with Tamil classical musicians. I'm trying to collaborate with Carnatic musicians and see what the instrument can do. So it's still in the process of experimentation. So, so why I started this instrument was, so initially I was interested about the instruments of West Bengal. Like they were interesting to me, but after finding about this instrument, it made me feel more personal, and like it was from the land that I was belonging to, and like I really wanted to do this and like, to start something like this from my own part of land, and like it was easy for me to connect to the instrument. Like people were excited to show me the research books and all that, and like it was easy for me to do the research like from my piece.
The title of this talk series is Sonic Legacies, and your project fits very interestingly in this kind of broad kind of title. For me, the instrument is also, beyond being just a musical instrument. How do you approach this in a broader sense, beyond your instrument and beyond being a musician? The question of information or knowledge that we gain from sound and music. What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, as you said, the instrument is not an instrument alone. So it's a representation of a particular culture, a particular time, the materials used in that particular time. It talks about the culture of the people. So initially when we were studying, so gut strings were used. So by that we were able to find like goats were eaten by people, and like goat skins were used. So that is another thing that relates to the material and the culture of that time. So it presents us the time in a way. So also the finding about the Tamil puns and all that. So we will be able to relate to what kind of music and what kind of tradition would have been in the past. So it's a mm, kind of a TV screen that shows us how the past would have been. So it is not about the instrument alone, and the sound of a landscape is mostly depends it depends on the geography, the vegetation, and all that. So, for example, let's take Parai or Mridangam. We use Palamaram, where in the place where like the jackfruits are found. So this also shows the vegetation of the particular space, and like the usage of skins also says about the food habits of the people. So this in a whole sense like shows us a lot of things that could relate to us. And like in the past there would have not been any steels used, so it is mostly bronze, that is vengalam, which is being used. So we'll be able to find the materials that they were working on with. So, and also finding about the carving patterns of the past, going to the temples and knowing about what would have been the patterns of the past, we will be able to relate with the culture. So it's in a sense showing off the culture from the past.
That's very interesting. So what you're pointing to, I think, is that there's through the investigation and the fabrication of this instrument, we we are revealed a broader ecology of traditions and culture and of the past. So it's almost like it's a gateway into the past.
Yeah. So this is one thing like that is interesting about the instrument, but I mostly think the instruments should stand alone without having all these cultural luggage with it. But being like made like the instrument being practical and being playable and being affordable is something that we are looking for word to make it. Like without the history, like history is another thing. Like it might be interesting for some people, might not be interesting, but the instrument alone, if it could sound better and like it will, if it could fit in the present music scene, it will be great.
That's interesting. That's an interesting point you make, that the instrument itself should have a life of its own beyond all the other associations that come with it. I want you to talk a little bit about your business, Uru. I know you called, and the other kinds of work that you do beyond instrument making. Could you talk about that aspect and of your work as well?
Yeah. So Uru is an idea of building a musical ecosystem where we sell musical instruments, where we teach musical instruments, and like we train more luthiers for uh, like for the future. So and we are also trying to do some research about other instruments and like make it in a form that will be easily makeable and like easily accessible. So that's what Uru is doing, and we are also trying to produce musical albums based out of these kinds of instruments, like only these kinds of instruments. So to showcase some of the abilities that it could do. So we are working on these kind of fields. So we are a small team of 10 people. So the Naveen Shekhar is the guy who does all the videos, and like he's a cinematographer. He was working with Raghurai, so he does all the video. And Jelly Kumar is another guy who does all the video editing. And like we have three assistant luthiers with us right now. So one's name is Pugal, another's name is Dinesh, and another girl's name is Parshini. So we all are working together, and we have a graphic design team, Ram. Rebecca and all them. So the whole team is being administrated by Aparna. So we are all doing it together, and like it's a small team for now. So like all of us are doing other kinds of work and also doing this. So it's a kind of collaborative thing that we are making. So apart from Uru, I'm a part of a band called Vatasavare, in which we story tell and sing. So me and my senior Praveka, we both do that. So we also have a community called Kolam. It's an architecture space. So we do architecture and that. So we all are together. Like we all work together. We stay together in Chennai.
Really wonderful to learn about your work and your projects, and it's I must compliment you on this very imaginative project, which has great meaning across different spaces. I think it's very unique, and so again, many congratulations on the wonderful work, and I really really look forward to what you and your colleagues do in the future. To end, I would like to play the music video. We would like to
Yeah.
showcase the video that you have created. Again,
Yeah.
thank you very much for all your time and great stuff.
மருதத்தினை திடுது திடுந்தேனி விடை கண்டேன் வினை கொண்டேன் என நிற்கும் பொருளே அவள் கண்ணி நோக்கின் பின்னிலை கொண்டு விடுவே நிஜம் போல் நிழல் போல் மருகித் திரிபொருளே காலத்தின் பரப்பில் நீ வெறுங்கூடு பொருளே.
என் வரம் யாவும் தட்டி பறிப்பது அந்நியர் முகம் தட்டி கேட்பதுடன் அறிவும் பெற்றோம் மிச்சம் இல்லாமல் என் எடுத்துக்கொண்டீர் மொத்தமாக வெல்ல எதற்கு வந்தீர் போதலை மோகம் ஆசையின் தாகம் எந்த வேடம் போட்டும் எதற்கு உனக்கொரு பொருத்தம் இல்லை பொருத்தம் இங்கே மன்னவர் மூகம் அரசர் குணம் அவனை மிஞ்ச வானம் கொட்டி போற்றும் கடவுள் உண்டு எதுவும் இல்லை எவரும் இல்லை இது உன் தலையில் உணரும் நிலை வரவும் இல்லை வரமும் இல்லை
இறங்குன்றும் பகலெல்லாம் இரவல்ல கோணே நீ ஆளும் தென்னாட்டில் நிலவில்லை கோணே சனி பூண்டு செவ்வானம் சான்றோர் சொல் கோணே அண்டத்தின் போர் ஒட்டும் ஓர் முரசு கோணே கடிவாள் வடிவாள் மடியா கொடுவாள் தடிபோல் ஒரு கோள் இது ஆயுதம் போல் குடிமகிழ குலமகிழ அவள் உதயம் அது நிகழ புவி பின் குறைவா